And back inside the studio now. As we told you before the break, the funeral is tonight for Jameek Maudlin. He is the boy, the 4-year-old who starved to death in Harlem. His funeral will be held this evening in Brooklyn. The Administration for Children's Services has been the focus of recent attention in light of Jameek's death and the discovery of his 3 siblings who were found severely malnourished. ACS calls this case a terrible tragedy, but the agency has not disclosed its reported history with the family or whether it could have done more to save Jameek, whose parents have now been charged with manslaughter. Yesterday, we brought you the story of 2 whistleblowers who contacted New York One about how their jobs as caseworkers at ACS have changed, and they shared their concerns that this shift that ACS has undergone is potentially endangering children. Today, we are looking at how an increasing number of calls to ACS are sent to its unit that is non-investigatory. The goal of this unit, called CARES, is to support families rather than to investigate them each time an allegation is made. These workers say that on paper that sounds like the right thing to do, but too often they have seen that it's not working out as intended. Before he died, 5-year-old Daniel Timberlake is believed to have ingested his father's methadone. The NYPD said his father had a history of child neglect cases with the Administration for Children's Services. Brian Santiago, the disabled 10-year-old whose body was found decomposing in his apartment, was reportedly born with marijuana in his system, triggering an immediate ACS investigation. And after a sibling of 4-year-old Jameek Maudlin, who died of starvation this month, tested positive for marijuana at birth, an ACS case was also reportedly opened. ACS would not confirm a history with Daniel, Brian, or Jameek's families. Yet 2 ACS employees who contacted New York One prior to these cases told us that if a child is not considered to be in imminent danger, allegations of drug use are eligible for its CARES track. CARES is ACS's unit that focuses on supporting families instead of investigating claims of maltreatment. It's not known if these cases were routed to CARES. Thank you both for coming in. The whistleblowers agreed to speak with us on camera if we conceal their identities, as they feared retaliation.
A parent now who has an active drug addiction, crack, fentanyl, heroin, is available for the CARES approach. And I think that's really horribly dangerous, inherently dangerous homes where you have this kind of activity going on.
ACS disputes that. A spokesperson told us that the majority of cases alleging parental drug use are routed to investigations. The agency has also launched child safety campaigns that include distributing lockboxes to store drugs. Marcia Lowry, an expert on child welfare, says drug use clouds judgment, which in itself is a risk to children.
It is easy to ignore the children when somebody is very high, and that's a danger to children. So if there's drug use in the home, it's not as easy to just stick it in a corner or in a lockbox.
These workers say an allegation of drug use is one of many calls to ACS that can be diverted to CARES instead of investigations.
They've started to expand the criteria for CARES, and that's terrifying for me. Another expansion of the CARES criteria has become criminal activity in the home. That's now CARES eligible, and that's crazy.
These whistleblowers explain that under CARES, they are required to get parental consent before interviewing a child or neighbor, an authority they previously had when they were investigators.
In CARES, we sort of asked the parent, we got this report that you hit your child. Can you tell us, do you hit your child? Mom is always going to say, no, I don't hit my child.
Educational neglect is another category that has changed. Now the majority of those allegations are routed to CARES. Lowry points out educational neglect can be a symptom of something much more serious.
There's often a connection between long absences from school and serious problems in the home, including abuse.
This worker gives an example of a child who missed more than 2 months of school.
I showed up at the door. I was the first CARES worker. I worked with the parent and the child. Here's a resource. Here's a referral. Here's another phone call to call. None of that was done. My case closed after 60 days. If that's a promising outcome, I don't know what metric that is, okay, because nothing was done for the child.
ACS says that most educational neglect cases are not substantiated. While Commissioner Jess Danhauser declined our request for an interview, he issued a statement that reads in part, We continuously assess our work so we can identify opportunities to strengthen our policies, practices, and services. We are working to build a multifaceted system that protects children, connects families to help, and New Yorkers' trust to be fair and calibrated to the needs of each of NYC's children and families. When asked about criticism of the CARES program back in May, Danhauser had this response.
They go deep with families. In fact, families begin to trust them, and we get a lot further often in solving issues for families. CARES is an approach that we use. If we decide during that investigation that something's unsafe, we can retrack it to an investigation, but we are doing really, really well with CARES, and we're finding great outcomes for families.
These workers have a different viewpoint.
I disagree with the statement solely because I work directly with the families. So I see them continuously coming back. I see us going to the same home, addressing the same issues that are not being changed whatsoever.
As a child protective specialist, what made you want to enter that career?
Well, I care a lot about children, and I care about helping children and making sure they're safe. I didn't have a great childhood, so I feel like that makes me want to ensure that other children too have better childhoods. So I guess that's what made me get into it.
And do you feel fulfilled in your work now?
No.
I want to bring in Althea Stevens. She represents several neighborhoods in the Bronx in District 16, and you are also chair of the Council's Committee on Youth and Children. So thank you so much for coming in to talk about this. And why don't we start with your reaction to what we just heard from those two caseworkers?
Well, I just want to say anytime a child is hurt or harmed or a tragedy dies, it's a failure on all of our parts, right? I think for me, I'm just always just devastated when young people are being hurt. My life's work and passion has been about protecting young people and making sure that they feel safe and feel loved. And so when that's not happening, I take that very serious, and I'm just really devastated, and we have to figure out how to make sure this does not continue to happen because this is unacceptable.
We are going to take a quick break. When we come back on the other side of this commercial, I want to get into some of those policy issues and some of the work that you are doing on just that front. But stay with us. The Rush Hour. We'll be right back.